Well, in today's lecture we have to add all the essential settings in order to make router class function. These settings will be added to config PHP file. Let's start from defining the list of languages which will be used in our project. In our situation there are English and French. We set their two char codes in the array. As a result, the language list is accessible by languages key. We also have to add roots, that's why we add settings with roots key. In this case, there are default and admin roots. Roots are represented as associative array in which the key is the root name and the value is prefix method. If the access to pages controller in admin panel is executed, methods with admin prefix are called. Here is an example. In order to get the list of pages in admin panel, we use admin method underscore index of the pages controller. Router class automatically defines current root and uses the corresponding prefix. Then we add default root settings, value of which is default. If the access to admin panel is absent in URL, the default root is used. The next step is setting the default language. If the language is not explicitly given in URL, this value, which is equal to EN, that is English, will be used. The next is setting the name of default controller. We are going to create pages controller, that's why we add settings with default controller key and pages key. The next default settings is the name of default method. Let's make its value equal to index. It means that in case of the localhost pages request, index method of pages controller is called. Then we open router class PHP file. We need to add attributes to the root class. We add protected root attributes, method prefix, and language. After URL parsing, which is implemented by root object, the corresponding root values, method prefix, and current site language are written down in these attributes. Let's add getters for each of these attributes, since data stored in them must be accessible to other objects, such as controllers in particular. We add code to the router class constructor, which implements request parsing. It receives root, language, controller, method, and other parameters from a request. All the data is stored in the attributes of router class. The first attribute is the URI, in which we write the value of URI argument. Before doing this, we have to clean URI value from slash at the beginning and at the end of line with the help of trim function, and then to process the line with the help of URL decode function, in order to process correctly coded characters from URL. Now we have to get the default settings such as root list, standard root, standard controller, and others. At first we get root list and write it in the root variable. Let's write the default root value in this root. Then we assign to the method prefix attribute the corresponding prefix of the controller methods. We use this root key from the roots array. In such a manner, we get default method prefix. If controller, language, etc. are not given in URL, default values must be used. The following default method is language. We write in the language attribute the value of default language key. In the same way, we define default controller and default action. After this, we may start parsing URI. At first, we explode URI with the help of corresponding function. We have to get rid of question mark and get parameters if they are written in the request line. For this purpose, we use explode function with such parameters as question mark and URI attribute. And now the parsing line, from which we receive root, language, controller, action, and other parameters, is located in the URI parts array with 0 index. On getting the essential line, which is cleaned from extra elements, we divide it into parts with the help of explode function and slash character, which is used in request line. We write the result of explode function in the path parts variable. And this is an array. Let's check whether we succeeded and output this array to browser. We add the HTTP localhost controller action param1 param2 address. This is the way the typical request to our website looks. As we can see, 4 elements which correspond to address line appear to be in the array. In this example, controller goes first without given language or admin root. Action goes second after controller, and the first parameter as well as the second goes next to action. We delete action and parameters from the request. As we can see, one element, controller, is left in the array. For such requests, where actions are not given, we call controller method with the default name. In this case, it is index method. What would happen if only localhost is left in URL? There would be only one empty element in the array. We comment out the debug output, and now we may actually start parsing this array. It is pretty simple. We set condition which checks path parts array for non-emptiness. Then we build code which walks through all the array elements on a rota basis and divides it into constituents. According to our scheme of URL building, language, root, or controller may be the first given request element. So we implement verification. If the current element path parts exists in root array and is the key of this array, we will write the root attribute with this value. In addition, we also write the corresponding method prefix in the method prefix attribute. We get the current array element with the help of current function. After this, we shift the first element from the array with the help of array_shift function. In this example, the actual root, which is either admin or default, is stored in this root. Let's add the extra verification with the help of isSet in order to find out whether root in the root array exists. Then we add else condition. If the first array element doesn't appear to be explicitly given root, it may appear to be language code. According to this, we check whether the current array element is included into language code array. For example, enfr. Don't forget that the language list is given in the config PHP file. If the current path parts element is a language code, we will write the language attribute value. And once again we shift the array with the help of array_shift. The only element of the path parts array which comes next is controller. If the current element isn't empty, we add the value of this element in the controller attribute in lowercase and shift the path parts array. In the next array element, action may be given. If the current element isn't empty, we add the value in the action attribute in lowercase and shift the array again. This process is the same as in the previous case. When all the basic parts of request are found, all the elements which are located in the path parts array appear to be parameters. As in the request which we have already dealt with, there are param1, param2. Let's add path parts in these params. As a result, we set attributes in the router object. And for now, the general functionality of the router class is created. Let's check how it works. Checking whether router class object functions in the appropriate way is very easy. We output the result of request parsing to browser. Let's make use of getters of the router class. By rotation, we output root, language, controller, method which will be called. It consists of prefix and method name. For instance, admin prefix is used for admin panel of the site and for admin root. We also add parameters. We open browser and check how it works. We type localhost en. As we can see, after the language had been given in request, router defined the root, controller, and method automatically, regarding to default values. Then we add the text address localhost en goods view1. It may be a request for good with the ID equal to 1, written in English. We got correct results. We changed the language for French and add its code, FR. As we can see, the only thing that changes is language. Controller refers to address line, action as well. The parameter is number 1, which goes after the action, and which is stored in the parameter array params. We add one more parameter, and one more. It is also added to parameter array. And for now we take the language away from the address line. The language code is selected and it is equal to en. We check whether the request to admin panel works. We add admin root, which stands next to localhost and before goods controller. Now the root is equal to admin. Controller is still equal to goods, it's okay. The responsible controller method is called admin view. However, it would be more correct to add underscore between admin and view in the method name. Let's do it. We add underscore to root prefix. Refreshing page, we can see that the required controller method is called admin view. That's why we need roots and method prefixes. In controllers, we may create methods for lots of roots such as admin panel and explode them with the help of prefixes. For example, in goods controller, there may be admin view method, which means good viewing in the admin panel of site, and view method is good viewing in the general part of the site. If we just go to localhost admin, we get as follows. Default controller is pages, method is admin index. Finally, we may conclude that everything works absolutely correctly, and that's great. In the next lecture, we'll start using received data and teach the application to call controller methods.